Hi, Imora. On my 33rd birthday, I got a text from my mother that said, "We sold your car. Your sister needed a new phone. Be grateful, no happy birthday, no explanation, just gone." But that was only the beginning. What would you do if you found out your own family forged your name on bank loans, drained your savings, erased you from family photos, and rewrote a will to give your inheritance to someone else? And worse, what if they made you feel like you were the problem the whole time? Would you fight back? Or would you let them keep writing your story for you? Tacoma never tries to be beautiful, it simply is. The gray, the mist, the cold it settles into you like a second skin. That afternoon, I drove home from the hospital in silence, windshield wipers cutting across a steady drizzle that had no intention of stopping. My 33rd birthday. I wasn't expecting streamers or balloons, but I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would remember. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly as it always did. No extra cars, no porch light left on for a surprise. That was fine. I had a bottle of white chilling in the fridge and a leftover lasagna slice waiting. Quiet was something I'd learned to live with. Inside, I peeled off my hospital badge and scrubs, dropped them on the bathroom floor, and stepped into sweats. My phone buzzed as I was tying my hair into a loose knot. A message from Mom. "Sold your car. Callista needed a new phone. Be grateful we still feed you." The air left my lungs. I blinked, certain it was a mistake. Another message came through before I could respond. "You're being dramatic. It's just a car." My knees gave slightly, but I steadied myself on the bathroom counter. Then I moved fast. Out the front door, barefoot, the concrete wet under my feet. The driveway? Empty. My car? Gone. The Civic I bought after 2 years of double shifts, paid off in full 6 months ago. Gone. I stepped back inside. The living room was warm, smelled faintly of toasted bread. Veramy mother sat at the kitchen island, legs crossed, scrolling through her iPad, like she hadn't just detonated a bomb through text. "Where's my car?" I asked. She didn't look up. "You didn't really need it, did you? You work 10 minutes away." "I needed it because it was mine." She laughed, like it said something funny. "Don't be so selfish. Your sister's got that sponsorship thing in LA. She needs to look the part." I didn't answer. I knew if I stayed, I'd say something I couldn't unsay. I walked past her and upstairs, shutting the door behind me. Dinner was silent. I sat alone at the table, stabbing at a microwaved plate of whatever was left in the fridge. No cake, no card. No one even said happy birthday. Callista, my younger sister, was in Palm Springs for a content shoot. She posted 3 outfit changes before noon and a photo of the new phone with a glittering caption, "Blessed, thank you, fam." I guess I was fam. Halfway through dinner, Vera passed behind me and muttered, "We can't let you hold your sister back. She's the one who needs to make it." I didn't respond. I stared at the wall. That wall still had Callista's high school dance trophy, her prom queen sash, a framed print from her first brand deal. Nothing of mine. I walked upstairs. My old bedroom was half storage now. Boxes lined the corners, mostly labeled Misk, Holiday, or Callista's old stuff. I crouched near the far wall, where I kept an old shoebox under my dresser. Inside were folded receipts, the car title, insurance documents, the last payment confirmation. Every single page had my name on it. Every dollar came from my account. I sat back on the floor, holding that shoebox like it was the last part of me that made sense. Fury roiled in my chest, hot and controlled. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't betrayal. It was theft disguised as family. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. My mind played through old scenes like a movie reel. When I was 18, my college fund disappeared because Dad had to refinance the house. When I landed an internship in Seattle, my celebration dinner was canceled because Callista had cheerleading finals. No one apologized. They just told me I was so understanding. "You're the strong one. She needs support." For years, that was the mantra. Spoken with affection, as if I should wear it like a badge of honor. All it did was turn me into a ghost in my own home. That night, as the rain finally slowed outside my window, I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app. I typed a new title: Everything They Took. First entry: Honda Civic paid in full. Gone. Second: College fund rerouted. Third: my birthday. I kept going. The first name missing was mine. On the wall, on the bank account, on every family photo that stayed framed. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I told the hospital I had an urgent personal matter. They didn't ask questions after all. I rarely called out. The air outside was wet and bitter, the kind of spring chill that seeped under your sleeves before you could curse it. Instead of coffee, I went straight to the garage. It still smelled like oil and forgotten Christmas decorations. Under the far shelf, in a plastic bin I hadn't touched since I moved back, was the filing box I needed. Inside, every folded paper, every stamped receipt, every signature I'd collected over 5 years of car payments waited patiently to remind me. This was never theirs to take. I pulled out the title, clean and final. Loan payoff confirmation. Purchase invoice. Insurance documents. My name was on every line. I stood there, paper in hand, and something in my chest shifted. The ache from yesterday wasn't gone, it had evolved. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. Downstairs, Vera was at the stove, flipping eggs like it was any other Tuesday. She didn't glance up as I entered the kitchen, barefoot on cold tile. I laid the car title on the counter beside her coffee mug. You sold something that never belonged to you. She turned the bacon. It was a contribution to the family. My voice didn't rise. Then this family owes a receipt. She scoffed. You're overreacting. It's just a car. You walk to work. I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to hear me over the sizzle. You didn't take my keys. You took my name. She paused, for the first time, like it said something she hadn't scripted for. But it passed. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and walked away, leaving the eggs burning. Later that day, as I sat at the dining table, sorting documents into manila folders, my phone buzzed. FaceTime. Callista. I debated answering, but curiosity won. Her face popped up, glowing from perfect Scottsdale lighting. Hey, birthday girl, I just saw your messages. Wait, they sold your car? I said nothing. She blinked dramatically. That's wild. I thought it was like a shared car. It wasn't, I replied. She paused, gave a pouty look to the camera. Well, if it really means that much to you, I'll give you mine. I can Uber until my next shoot. I smiled. Not because I believed her, but because I finally saw it. How easy it was for her to offer what wasn't hers either. No need. I walk just fine. She laughed like it was a joke, told me she had to go to a poolside networking thing, and the screen went black. Back in my room, I opened my laptop. I started a spreadsheet and named it Assets Paid, Assets Taken. Row 1, 2017 Honda Civic, $21,630. Row 2, iPhone 14 Pro, $1,099. Row 3, birthday, 33rd, 0. Net loss, pride. I scanned each receipt and uploaded PDFs. I photographed the title, the loan closure letter, the maintenance log I'd kept diligently like a badge of adulthood. File name, Wexley Theft, archive.pdf. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. About reclaiming something that had been slowly shaved away over years of being the responsible one. That night, I ate alone again. But I wasn't small. I wasn't invisible. I watched headlights pass through the blinds and thought about how many women like me sat in silence at tables they paid for, next to people who pretended they owed nothing. I stared at the empty driveway. You thought I'd just let it slide. Watch me document every theft in ink. You don't truly notice erasure until you go looking for evidence that you ever mattered. I stopped by the house that morning under the pretense of grabbing a few old files from the hall closet. It was still early quiet enough to make you believe people were kind. I stepped inside without knocking. No one called out, and I didn't call for them either. That kind of familiarity had already faded. As I passed through the living room, something caught my eye, subtle absence in the family photo wall. There had been a space, right between Callista's prom portrait and a shot of her with a dolphin in Cabo, where my graduation photo used to hang. It was gone. In its place was a glossy, framed photo of Callista parasailing in Mexico, all smiles and sun. Professionally printed, centered, perfectly lit. I stood still for a long minute. Then I made my way to the kitchen. Vera stood at the counter, pouring cereal into a bowl like she was auditioning for a commercial. She didn't look up. She never really did. "Where's my graduation photo?" I asked, voice flat. She didn't pause. It was outdated. The new one adds more color to the wall. My jaw clenched. That photo was mine. She shrugged. "It's not like we threw it away. It's probably in one of the drawers." I nodded, turned, and walked out. No fight, no breakdown. But inside, something moved. Not the raw wound from losing something, but the dull press of knowing it was deliberate. Back at my apartment, I pulled out my phone and opened the shared family photo album. I scrolled. And scrolled. There I was, 2 years ago, smiling beside Callista at Thanksgiving. And then, less. Fewer appearances. Then, none. Photos from family gatherings, where I was holding the camera, but never in front of it. Birthdays I hadn't been invited to. Weddings where my RSVP was pending because no one bothered to ask. It wasn't deletion. It was quiet replacement. A slow fade into the background, like they hoped it'd vanish without complaint. That night, I was folding laundry when Jess texted. Jess had been my friend since high school, the kind of person who never deleted old files or changed her number. "Look what I found." This popped up on my external backup drive. "Remember this?" She sent a link. A video. I tapped it. Heart already tight. It was my 26th birthday. I hadn't remembered much of that day until the footage started playing. I stood in front of our family and a few neighbors in the backyard, holding a paper plate of cake. I had just started thanking everyone, voice shaky but trying. Then, before I could finish the second sentence, my father's voice cut in. "Let's save time, Callista just signed a modeling contract. Can we get a round of applause?" The camera turned. Everyone clapped. I vanished off screen. The video ended there. I watched it again. And again. Not out of disbelief, but because something in me needed confirmation. Not just that it had happened, but that I hadn't imagined the pattern. That I had been removed, one story at a time. I opened my notes app. Footage from 26th birthday. Timeline of dismissal. Confirmed. The next morning, I returned to the house with a framed copy of my college acceptance letter. It was still in the manila envelope from the university, edges curled with age. I stood in front of the family photo wall and, with deliberate calm, placed it next to the parasailing shot. No announcement, no grand gesture, just that. Later that day, Aunt Lenora came by to drop off something. She noticed it immediately. She didn't say a word, just nodded. That was enough. And once I saw how deep the rot went, I knew I couldn't unsee it or pretend it wasn't aimed at me. The first warning came in the form of a declined transaction. I was trying to pay my internet bill, same account I'd always used. Declined. I checked the number again, tried a different card, same message. My stomach didn't drop this time. It hardened. Back home, I logged into my online banking. What I saw wasn't just suspicious, it was surgical. My personal savings had been sliced with quiet precision. Transfers labeled vaguely. Family emergency. Household rebalance. Callista fund. And there, glowing like a slap in my face, was a new joint account listed under Household Langley. My name was tagged as co-owner. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't signed anything. But someone had. That afternoon, I walked into my local branch and asked to speak with a manager. I'd been with this bank since college. They knew me. The woman, polite and pleasant, clicked through the screen. She frowned. "It looks like this account was opened a few months ago, Mom, with your father as primary. He brought a letter authorizing the connection, signed by you." My voice stayed level. "Can I see the letter?" She printed it. The signature at the bottom looked like a child trying to mimic cursive. Not even close. My name bent at odd angles, ink too dark like someone pressed too hard while copying. I thanked her, folded it carefully, and slid it into my leather folder, already full of dates and receipts that proved one thing: this wasn't neglect. It was design. Back at my apartment, the rain had returned, tapping against the windows like a metronome for dread. I pulled up my credit report. There it was. A personal loan. $21,000. Taken out in my name 6 months ago. Auto payments linked to that new joint account had been made consistently, never missed. It looked clean, responsible, like I was building credit. The kind of lie that could pass as truth until you peeled back the page. I stared at the screen for a long time, then picked up my phone and texted Nina, a friend from college who now worked as a paralegal. She replied within minutes. "Come by in the morning." Well, sort it. That evening, I sat on my couch with a yellow legal pad not to vent, but to list. The full scope: $21,000 loan, forged signature for joint account, multiple transfers from personal funds. No consent, no notification. The pen trembled in my hand, but not from fear. From control. I wasn't breaking. I was building something one line item at a time. The next morning, I met Nina in her office downtown. She didn't flinch when I handed her the paperwork. She just nodded. "This is fraud, identity theft technically. But when it's family, it gets complicated." I exhaled. What do I do? First credit freeze, then file an incident report with the Bureau. You can request a forensic signature analysis too. She looked at me. If this were anyone else, Maura, you'd have sued already. I didn't answer. But I was done thinking blood excused betrayal. That night, I sat in bed with a cup of tea and my journal. Not the one I wrote feelings in, the one I used to remember who I was before people tried to edit me. I flipped back to a quote Vera had written in my freshman yearbook: "She's strong. She always figures it out." I wrote beneath it, "Strength is not letting them rewrite your name on a loan you never asked for." The following evening, I showed up for dinner. Same table, same air of passive civility. No one mentioned the account. No one acknowledged the missing money. But when I passed Vera in the hallway, she paused. Her eyes met mine, just for a second. She knew. Harlan said grace that night. I kept my head bowed, but I wasn't praying. I was memorizing the silence. How thick it felt, how much it said. They didn't know what I'd uncovered, but they could feel it in my posture. I wasn't angry anymore. I was prepared. I knew they wouldn't stop, not because they needed to destroy me, but because they needed to keep the version of themselves they sold to everyone else. Vanessa picked the calf. I hadn't seen her in a few years, maybe since her wedding. Downtown Tacoma had its usual buzz brunch crowds, people walking dogs in puffer vests. I arrived early, and she was already there, stirring iced tea and not meeting my eyes. We caught up about nothing. Work, weather, the quality of espresso these days. Then she cleared her throat and said, "I need to tell you something." I waited. "Your parents opened a Macy's credit line under my name. It was about 6 years ago." Everything inside me froze. She rushed to explain. I didn't say anything because I was scared. I got a call from collections, and when I confronted them, they said it was an error. I didn't press charges. I didn't want to cause drama. I felt myself nodding, not because I understood, but because I recognized the pattern. They had used her, too. Vanessa, the girl who once braided my hair before prom. She didn't owe me an apology. I still whispered, "I'm sorry." She gave a small smile. "I figured you didn't know, but maybe it's time you do." Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table with a half glass of wine and a message from Aaron Callistas' ex-boyfriend. He and I had only spoken twice before, but his email was clipped, cold and loaded. Subject: Things you deserve to know. Attached: screenshots of text exchanges between him and Vera, photos of receipts, even an invoice for social media consulting under a fake LLC Vera created to fund Callista's follower growth. The brand deals were fake. They bought followers, bought comments. Everything's been staged since 2020. The kicker? A check written from my name, forged, sent to a dealership to cover Callista's gifted car. Every curated post, every sparkle-infused caption built from my stolen credit. I stared at the screen for a long while. Then I opened a new document. Not legal, not evidence, a letter. I started writing, not to vent, but to clarify. You've built a house of mirrors, and I was the floor you walked on while painting the ceiling gold. Line after line, I dismantled the illusion they had constructed. How my identity had been bartered to buy perfection. I didn't plan to send it, but I printed it, folded it, and added it to my folder. A few days later, I drove to the house. No plan for an ambush. I just wanted to speak, to finally set the record straight. Dinner was over, the table cleared. Vera was folding a napkin when I walked in. "Maura!" she beamed. "You should have told me you were coming. I would have saved you a plate." I placed my folder on the counter. "If you touch another document with my name on it, I will take it to court." Her smile twitched. "This is no longer emotional. It's legal." Harlan entered the room mid-sentence, froze. Callista trailed behind him and stopped in the doorway. No one moved. "I have copies. I have timestamps. Don't make me prove it to people who don't already love you." Vera scoffed. "We made you who you are. Don't forget that." I took a step closer. "If that were true, you wouldn't need to lie about it." I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't raise my voice. That kind of noise always served them more than me. The air outside smelled like salt and leaves. Autumn was coming early. Back at home, I renamed the file on my desktop from Wexley Theft Archive.pdf to Wexley Truth Timeline PDF, because this wasn't just about what they took anymore. It was about what they couldn't erase. That night, I backed up everything to a hard drive, the old one I'd labeled Private Archives in black marker years ago, when I still thought keeping evidence was about self-preservation. This time, it wasn't just backup. It was preparation. I made 2 copies. One I kept in the desk drawer with a coded label. The second went into a fireproof box beneath my bed, alongside the deed to my condo and a sealed letter I hadn't opened in 6 years. I wasn't paranoid. I was precise. The loan rejection came quietly, on a Tuesday. I'd applied for a short professional development course, 6 weeks, online, employer-sponsored. Barely a speed bump in my schedule. It was supposed to be a stepping stone, a simple checkmark on my career roadmap. When the decline email arrived, I blinked. Surely it was a typo, a glitch. Maybe the system didn't process my income verification properly. But no, the denial was real, and so was the reason. I called the credit bureau, expecting a robotic voice. What I got was worse. A calm, almost too kind woman who spoke like she'd read this script 1,000 times. "Your application was denied due to a sudden increase in open accounts and revolving debt," she said. "Would you like me to go over the details with you?" "Yes," I whispered, though part of me already knew. As she read off account after account I hadn't opened, a pit grew in my stomach. "Were you aware of this activity?" "No," I answered, voice flat. "But I know who did it." She didn't respond. Just a pause. Then a muted breath, like she was reminding herself not to get involved. That night, I sat in silence at my dining table, surrounded by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the low buzz of a world that kept spinning while mine quietly tilted. The rejection letter stayed open on my laptop screen, still glowing when the courier knocked. A thick envelope, overnighted, from Nina. Inside, a printed check, scanned and folded. My name typed at the top, my signature at the bottom. But it wasn't my signature. It was an imitation a ghost of my old handwriting, the way I used to sign birthday cards in high school. The curve of the M, the loop on the S so familiar it made my stomach turn. Someone had copied not my style now, but a version of me they still remembered. Or thought they did. The check had paid for a brand new iPhone. Top of the line. The same one Callista had shown off on Instagram last week, with a caption that read, "Milestone Vibes. Thanks, Universe." In the memo line of the check, in a handwriting that clearly wasn't mine. "Happy milestone, darling." I didn't cry. My hands shook a little, But my breath stayed even. I didn't rage. I reached for a pushpin. One pushpin. One more proof. I pinned the check on my corkboard next to the bank transfer printouts, the flagged email from Vanessa about the department store credit card, and a screenshot from my birthday video that had haunted me since January. This wasn't an outburst. This was architecture. I opened my laptop again. No hesitation this time. Subject: cease and desist. Notice of intent body. Effective immediately, you are instructed to reverse all unauthorized use of my name, identity, and financial instruments. Continued violation will result in legal action, both civil and criminal. This is not emotional. It is a matter of law. No salutation, no farewell, just law. I hit send. Then I waited. Not for peace. For pattern. Hours passed. One text arrived, from Vera. You're overreacting. I didn't reply. I walked to the drawer beside the filing cabinet, pulled out my external hard drive, and connected it. It whirred to life, a slow hum, like the calm before a storm. I began copying everything: financial records, screenshots, PDFs, voice recordings, receipts, statements, even texts I'd screenshotted out of instinct but never thought I'd need. I labeled the new master folder, Wexley Legal Master. Then I made tea, sat on the floor, and turned my living room into a war room. Sticky notes, tabs, highlighters, manila envelopes, color-coded files. I wasn't scared. I wasn't desperate. I was building a timeline. My grandfather Wexley used to say over morning coffee, long before he passed. Some folks only understand truth when it's notarized. The next morning, I got up early and walked to the notary's office on Broadway. No dramatic music, no storm clouds, just the quiet certainty of someone who knows their case is airtight. I presented my ID, signed 3 affidavits, watched the notary seal each document with the clinical grace of someone who's witnessed 100 small wars in ink. When I got home, I renamed the file Wexley v. Langley Exhibit Master. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about getting them to believe me. It was about having the kind of proof no one could edit, manipulate, or gaslight out of existence. This time, I wasn't documenting to be heard. I was documenting to defend. And this time, I wasn't going to lose. I wasn't just preparing a folder, was building a fortress. The message arrived just after midnight, when most decent people are asleep, and the rest are looking for truth. I didn't recognize the name at first, Aunt Ruth. She was my mother's cousin, technically, but always called herself my aunt. Maura, the message read, I don't know how much you know, but your grandfather left you something and it didn't vanish. It was taken. Attached was a PDF file, the original will. My name was listed clearly, right next to a modest trust fund set aside for education and first home expenses. Nothing extravagant, just something he believed would help me stand on my own. But it wasn't just the inclusion that caught my attention. It was the version below dated 6 months later. My name had been removed, replaced with Callistus. Ruth's final note read, They told the family you gave it up. I didn't believe it then. I know better now. By the next morning, I was parked outside Lenora's place. She opened the door without asking why I was there. Her face said she already knew. We didn't sit. She walked to her filing cabinet, pulled out a green folder, and handed it to me. Inside, court paperwork, legal reassignment of the trust, filed by Vera. Grounds, beneficiary mentally unfit to manage finances, estranged from family unit. I stared at the page until the words blurred. They rewrote my future, I whispered. Lenora's voice was soft but resolute. But you can still reclaim it. That evening, I sat on the floor of my apartment, timeline folder open like a map of stolen things. I tore a sheet from the back of a notepad and wrote a new cover page. Assets I built. Assets they buried. I added the trust paperwork behind the credit fraud, the forged check, the erased images, the video from my 26th birthday. Then I opened a fresh page and wrote my will. It wasn't long, just enough to name myself. The next day, I walked into the State Financial Bureau with a copy of every document. I waited in line like any citizen. No special treatment. Just a woman carrying a story and the weight of stolen inheritance. The clerk skimmed the file, paused. "This involves your parents?" I didn't flinch. "This involves perpetrators." I signed the statement, left my contact info, and walked out. As the doors swung shut behind me, it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a door slamming on someone else's story. That night, I was folding laundry when I heard the knock. Callista stood on the other side of the door, holding a folder. She looked smaller. Not thinner, not weaker, just less curated. "I didn't know," she said, eyes already brimming. "Mom said it was always mine." I didn't raise my voice. Then ask her to prove it under oath. She didn't argue, didn't cry, just turned and walked away. And for the first time, I didn't wonder if she'd ever come back. Later, I added the new files from Ruth and Lenora to the folder. Then I opened my laptop, turned on the webcam, and hit record. I didn't dress it up, no makeup, no lighting tricks, just me. My words, my version. I named every action, every manipulation, every forgery. I showed documents, read out dates, and ended with a sentence I hadn't rehearsed. This is the version that will remain. That night, I slept for the first time in months. Not like someone victorious, but like someone unburdened. I didn't have to prove I was telling the truth anymore. I didn't have to convince people who had already decided I didn't matter. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't carry the weight of needing to be believed. The group text came the next morning. "Thursday, from Vera. Family brunch this weekend at the house. Let's reconnect, for unity." The word unity made my stomach churn. As if we hadn't just spent the last 6 months buried in legal filings, forged documents, and whispered betrayal. Unity? After a hijacked trust and years of silent sabotage? Still, I didn't delete the message. I didn't respond either. Instead, I opened the file on my desktop financial misconduct, MW.PDF, and printed 5 clean copies. Each was clipped neatly, labeled at the top in bold font. Timeline of Financial Misconduct, Maura Wexley. I placed them in a folder bag, zipped it shut, and went back to sipping my tea. Sunday came with blue skies and trimmed hedges. The Langley driveway looked like a postcard, every detail curated to perfection. As if the family was trying to put itself back together with landscaping and cinnamon rolls. I pulled in just before noon, parked at the edge, near the mailbox, got out, folder bag in hand, breath steady. The door opened before I knocked. Callista. She looked fragile, puffy eyes, barely their mascara clinging to the outer edges of her lashes like the last survivors of a storm. "Hey," she mumbled, voice thin as tissue paper. I nodded. Didn't slow down. Walked past her and into the home I was raised in, but never really belonged to. Inside, the scent of brunch was thick cinnamon, syrup, and something citrusy. But beneath that was tension. That quiet vibration you can only feel when people are pretending too hard. Vera emerged from the hallway, arms wide like a greeting card. "Look who's come home," she said, voice syrupy and brittle. I didn't hug her. I didn't smile. I stood at the head of the table, still holding the folder bag, watching as relatives drifted into the room, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, an uncle who always found a way to make every holiday uncomfortable, even a neighbor from 3 doors down who'd clearly been promised brunch without being warned about the storm ahead. Harlan leaned near the window, hands shoved into his pockets, pretending to study the rose bushes. Always quiet, always watching. Once everyone settled into their chairs, I unzipped the bag and pulled out the 5 copies. No fanfare, no small talk. I laid them flat on the center of the table, one in front of Vera, one in front of Harlan, one for Callista, and 2 more between the cousins. I stayed standing. "This isn't a confrontation," I said quietly. "It's a correction." You could have heard the ticking of the wall clock. Then Vera blinked, once, twice. Her gaze fell to the title page. Timeline of Financial Misconduct, Maura Wexley. I opened my copy and began to read. Page by page, line by line, bank transfers, loan applications, notarized forms, dates and amounts, legal footnotes. I didn't authorize this joint account, I said calmly. This is not my signature. This trust was reassigned without my consent. I wasn't theatrical. I didn't need to be. The facts had more weight than fury ever could. Harlan shifted in his chair. One cousin cleared her throat and looked away. Another pulled out their phone and started recording, silently, discreetly, like they knew this would matter later. Halfway through, Vera interrupted. Maura, this is not how we handle things, she said, trying to reassert control. I didn't stop. I picked up a photocopy of a check and held it up. This check, I said, was used to buy Callista's iPhone. Memo line says, "Happy milestone, darling," signed under my name. Callista's jaw dropped. Her fork clattered against her plate. You're saying Mom used your name for that? I met her eyes. For a second, I saw the child I once babysat. The teenager who used to sneak into my room when she was scared of storms. The adult I had tried to protect. I'm saying, I replied. I was erased so someone else could shine brighter. She blinked, tears welling up, but it wasn't defensiveness. It was confusion, pain. Why didn't you tell me any of this? She whispered. I inhaled to answer, but Vera slammed her hand on the table. This is family! We handle things quietly, she snapped, voice sharp. I turned to her, calm and steady. No, I said. You handled me like a secret. Am not one anymore. No shouting, no threats, just truth. I closed the last folder, stacked them together, and slid them back into my bag. Vera stormed upstairs without another word. Harlan followed, quiet as ever, his face unreadable. Callista remained at the table, still, staring down at her uneaten food. I looked around at the others. You're free to believe what you want, I said. But I won't be gaslit into silence again. From now on, I live in facts. Then I turned, walked out the front door, felt the sun hit my face like an apology. Lenora was already parked at the curb. I got into the passenger seat. We didn't say a word as she pulled away from the curb. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of something sacred. A few blocks passed before she spoke. They won't recover from this, she said softly. I stared out the window. Familiar houses blurred past. Neither will I said. But at least I'll recover honestly. The silence after the truth is louder than any screaming match I ever had with them. It's the kind of silence that doesn't seek to be filled. It settles, lingers, and somehow says everything. I woke to the sound of rain tapping gently on my bedroom window. It wasn't a dramatic storm, just that soft, rhythmic drizzle that seems to understand what you're feeling. That kind of rain arrives without warning, stays just long enough, and leaves behind the scent of something washed clean. I stayed in bed longer than usual, eyes tracing the ceiling of my apartment, the place I now called home. It was quiet, safe, mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. The weight I'd carried for decades hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. The pressure in my chest, once so sharp and unrelenting, now felt like a memory of pain rather than the pain itself. I didn't feel healed. Not exactly. But I felt air where there used to be suffocation. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even forgetting. It was space, and that space was enough. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table in my robe, letting the steam rise up toward my face, like some kind of ritual. No music, no distractions, just the warmth, the quiet, and me. My phone lit up once, a voicemail from a blocked number. I already knew who it was. Vera. I pressed play anyway. Her voice crackled through the speaker, low, rough, not the polished tone she always used in public. Call me, she said. Please just call me. I didn't. That afternoon, my cousin Shelby texted, FYI Vera's been calling everyone, trying to explain her side of things. Apparently, Harlan had taken a leave of absence from work. Stress, someone whispered. Callista had deleted all her social media accounts. Before she did, she posted a single photosome blurry sunset and the caption, "Sometimes love hurts more than lies." I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't want revenge. Just stillness. The kind that comes after a storm has ripped through your backyard, and the tree you always worried would fall finally has, but it didn't crush the house. It just fell. And now there's light where there used to be shadow. The days that followed were quiet. Not empty, not hollow, just different. At work, a group of nurses on my floor noticed I'd dropped weight, that I wasn't speaking as much, wasn't laughing like before. That week, I came back from break to find a birthday card taped to my locker. "We missed the date," it said. "But we see you." It was signed by every hand on the floor. I kept it on my fridge, right above the magnet that read, "Do no harm, but take no crap." My therapist emailed me 2 days later. "You did what many can't. You stood up when it hurt the most. Now let rest do what justice can't." I didn't reply. I just sat with it. Lenora showed up one evening with homemade soup and a yellow sticky note on the lid. "Nothing heals like time and turmeric." She didn't stay long, just hugged me like someone who knew the language of silence. That night, I opened the letter I'd once written to Varatha, one I never sent. I reread it slowly, word by word, tracing my old pain like it was someone else's journal. At the bottom, I added one final sentence. "You taught me how to be invisible, but you also taught me what not to become." Then, I saved the file under a new name, Unsent My Freedom. 2 weeks later, I sat across from a nonprofit attorney in a modest office above a bookstore that smelled like old paper and cinnamon. I asked how I could volunteer specifically for women recovering from identity theft, especially when it came from their own families. She handed me a clipboard of forms, then paused. "You'd be surprised how many come in here with your story," she said softly. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last." That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop and started a blog. Anonymously. I titled it, Daughter Unwritten. I didn't write because I needed followers. I wrote because, for the first time in my life, I felt like my voice didn't echo into emptiness. I wrote to remind myself I wasn't alone in the room anymore. And then, on a quiet Sunday morning, I put on my coat, tucked my hands into the pockets, and walked past my childhood home. A for sale sign was staked in the front lawn, flapping weakly in the wind. No cars in the driveway, no porch lights on, no shouting or laughter spilling from the windows. I didn't approach the door. I didn't need to. I stopped at the edge of the sidewalk and looked at the house I once called mine. Then I whispered, "You took my car." I walked my way out, and I did, without looking back. Sometimes the people who raise us are also the ones who quietly undo us. I spent years mistaking silence for strength and loyalty for love. But strength isn't about how much you can take, it's about knowing when to stop taking it. If you're watching this and feel like your story has been rewritten without your permission, let this be your reminder. You are allowed to take the pen back. You're allowed to draw the line. You're allowed to tell the truth, even when it shakes the very foundation you were taught to protect. In this country, we're raised on the values of family, hard work, and self-respect. But those things don't have to contradict each other. You can protect your peace and still respect where you came from. You can choose boundaries and still believe in reconciliation. And you can walk away and still love yourself. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever had to choose between being accepted and being honest? If this story resonated with you, comment number 1 or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like the video, tell me why. I want to learn from your experience too. If you want more stories that make you think, feel, and maybe even heal a little, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next one. Because sometimes one voice telling the truth is all it takes to help someone else find theirs. Hi there, I'm Yetta. You ever have someone joke about your life like it's entertainment? At our family dinner, my sister looked right at me, in front of everyone, and said, Just clean for me. I'll pay well. They laughed. I smiled. But inside, I crumbled. Turns out, that dinner was just the start. What followed? Lies, sabotage, my son getting humiliated at school, and the truth unraveling faster than I could hold it together. The dining room buzzed with conversation and clinking silverware, the scent of roasted ham and store-bought rolls masking any trace of my homemade pecan pie. I had rushed here straight from my last cleaning job, still in my work jeans, still with that lemon-scented cleaner on my hands. Marla sat at the head of the table like she always did, flawless as ever in her cream blazer and pearls that practically screamed, "I'm better than you." She didn't look at me when I set the pie down. She waited until everyone had served themselves and laughter was filling the room. Then she dropped the grenade. "Next time, Yetta, just clean my house instead. I'll pay well. You could use it, right?" The room went dead quiet. You could have heard a napkin drop. Evan, my 15-year-old, shrunk in his seat, face flushed. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My throat locked up. I gave a tight smile and looked down at my plate like I was fascinated by mashed potatoes. I made it through 10 more minutes of that dinner. Barely. I volunteered to clear the dishes just to get out of that room. In the kitchen, I scrubbed the same pan twice. Behind me, I heard Marla laugh about something with Uncle Terrence. She never sounded more relaxed. As I dried my hands, Elwood, her husband, walked by on his way to the den. He paused, gave me this look. Not quite pity, more like discomfort. Like he knew she'd gone too far and didn't want to get involved. When I got home, it was just past 10. Evan went straight to bed without saying a word. I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the wall, pie still in the Togo container on the counter. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed. An email from Marla. Subject, real offer. "Hey, real talk. Got guests coming this weekend. Could use help. Let me know if you're taking jobs. I can afford a solid cleaner." I read it twice, 3 times. My fingers trembled. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Like she hadn't just humiliated me in front of our entire family. Like this was a normal thing between sisters. I didn't reply. I didn't even finish my coffee. I just stared at that screen until my eyes burned. That was the moment it hit me. Last night wasn't a joke. It wasn't a slip of the tongue or an awkward attempt at humor. It was a placement. A declaration. She wanted me beneath her. She needed me there. I spent the next few days trying to shake it off. Her words, her email, the feeling that I was just a story she told to make herself feel bigger. But something strange happened the following Friday. I'd just come home after cleaning a regular client's condo downtown. The sun had dipped behind the hills, and the takeout I picked up for Evan and me was still warm in the paper bag. I even smiled a little, thinking about how far I'd come from last year. That's why I froze when my phone rang at 6:03 p.m. "Hi, Yetta," a polite voice said. "I'm sorry, but we're going with another candidate for the Silverleaf Clinic contract. It's nothing personal, we just had someone else come highly recommended." My stomach turned cold. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. That rehearsed tone, that soft rejection, I'd heard it before, years ago when I tried to move out of Marla's shadow the first time. I set the bag on the counter and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my phone screen. I had a verbal agreement, a timeline. Everything was in motion. Later that night, as Evan scrolled through his phone in the living room, I got a call from Raylene, another cleaner I'd trained once. "You didn't tell me Trina got your spot at Silverleaf," she said, sounding cautious. "I didn't, because I didn't know." Raylene hesitated, then her voice dropped. "Look, I like you, so I'm going to tell you. Trina said she got referred after someone emailed the board. It had pictures, one of you, wearing your old gas station uniform. Said they were concerned about your public image." I didn't say anything, just held the phone to my ear while the room felt like it was tipping sideways. That photo? There was only one person I'd ever sent it to. Months ago, after I picked up an extra job at the gas station just to make rent. I had texted it to Marla, joking, "Rough day, but I'm still standing." She replied, "You always do what you have to. That's something." Now it was something she used to cost me a client, a contract, a chance to breathe. She didn't just humiliate me in front of everyone. She didn't just make me feel small at a dinner table. She took food off my son's plate, with a photo I sent in trust. The next few days moved in a fog. I went through the motions, making breakfast, returning client keys, double-checking invoices, but something in me was rattling loose. I could feel it. By Saturday morning, I needed air. I left Evan sleeping in, grabbed my tote, and headed to the farmer's market. The fresh bread stall always calmed me. So did the smell of basil and peaches, but that morning none of it worked. My chest stayed tight. That's when I saw her, Trina, standing near the bakery truck with her eyes glued to the pavement like it might swallow her whole. I tried to pass her without stopping, but she stepped into my path. "Yetta," she said barely above a whisper, "can I talk to you? Just 1 minute?" I didn't say yes, but I didn't move either. She swallowed hard, then said it. "I didn't know it was going to go down like that." "What do you mean?" She looked away. "Marla reached out to me, told me about the opening at Silverleaf, said she'd put in a good word." I didn't blink. "She didn't say anything about you until later," Trina added quickly. "She told the board she was concerned about image consistency. Then she forwarded them an email, one with your photo." Trina pulled out her phone, shaking fingers scrolling fast. "Here." The message was short. "We're rethinking our decision. Please see attached photo for context. Might not match clinic image." There it was. That same gas station photo. My tired face. My old shirt with someone else's name stitched on the pocket. I didn't realize I was holding my breath. "I'm sorry," Trina said again, her voice cracking. "I thought she was trying to help me. I had no clue she was aiming at you." I nodded slowly. Not out of forgiveness, but because now I knew. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't a one-off. Marla had been positioning herself above me for years, through charity, through advice, through pity. I walked away from Trina without another word, and as I passed the flower stall, memories hit me in waves. The gifts Marla gave me when I was out of work. Grocery cards, always with a smile and a speech about budgeting. Hand-me-downs, still with the tags, but always in a size too small. "You'll grow into them," she'd joke, "or grow down." Even her compliments were cuts. Her kindness always came with a string. I used to think she was being helpful, but now I understood. Marla never gave without reminding you who had more, and this time, it cost me more than pride. It cost me my livelihood. On the ride home from the market, I kept thinking of all the times I let it slide. Her digs, her charity, her masked superiority. I thought I could absorb it. I thought I could shield Evan from it. I was wrong. The next morning, I pulled out the vacuum and started cleaning under the couch cushions. A crumpled envelope caught my eye. One of those school forms with creases so sharp it looked like it had been folded in shame. It was a permission slip for Evan's science trip, due 3 days ago. I knocked lightly on his bedroom door and held it up. "Why didn't you give this to me?" He didn't look up. Didn't matter. Not like we'd have time or the money for it. I opened my mouth, then closed it. His tone wasn't angry. It was flat, like he had already made peace with not being part of things. He walked past me into the kitchen, poured himself cereal without a word. I watched him chew. Every scrape of his spoon against the bowl felt like another second I'd missed what was happening under my own roof. Later that week, I waited outside Tacoma High in the pickup lane. 2 moms stood nearby, chatting. One leaned in and lowered her voice just enough to still be heard. "That's her, Evan's mom, Marla's sister, the one who, cleans." They both gave that polite laugh people do when they want to sound amused, not cruel. But I saw Evan's shoulders stiffen as he climbed into the passenger seat. He shut the door and turned the music up before I even started the engine. I didn't speak on the drive home, not because I had nothing to say, but because I didn't trust what might come out. Rage, shame, or worse, tears. He headed to his room without a word. I stared at the dishes still in the sink from yesterday. I leaned against the counter and tried to swallow the lump in my throat. I used to think I could handle the bruises, her words, her looks. I thought I was the only one absorbing the hits. But when your child starts carrying the weight of your humiliation like it's their own, it changes everything. I peeked into Evan's room. He was doing homework, earbuds in, expression tight. The silence between us wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. That was the night I stopped waiting for peace. That was the night I started preparing for war. The next morning, I skipped my usual routine and sat at the kitchen table staring at the sunlight crawling across the floor. My phone buzzed around 10. Unknown number. I almost let it ring out, but something told me to answer. Yetta, it's Elwood. He sounded tired. He asked to meet somewhere neutral. We settled on the coffee shop near the hardware store, somewhere Marla wouldn't walk in. When I arrived, he was already sitting, stirring cream into coffee like it was the only thing he could control. He didn't look at me right away. I should have said something sooner, he started. You didn't deserve what she did. None of it. I stayed quiet. We're in debt. Bad. She wanted the new kitchen, then the car lease, the country club membership. She said it's all part of branding the household. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. I'm drowning, Yetta. Second mortgage, maxed cards. I even sold some of my tools. I felt the sting in my chest but kept my tone even. So why are you telling me this? He looked me in the eyes. Because someone in this family needs to stop pretending. That afternoon I drove straight to Marla's house. I didn't call. I didn't text. She answered the door, still wearing heels and a half-fake smile. Well, this is a surprise. I didn't waste time. You crossed a line. She blinked. What are you talking about? You sabotaged my work, you embarrassed my son, and for years I let you do it. But that ends today. Marla tilted her head, arms folded. So what? This is your little rebellion? No, I said. This is your warning. For a moment I thought she might actually hear me, but instead she smirked. You've always been dramatic, Yetta. You don't scare me. I stepped back. I'm not here to scare you, I'm just letting you know. Whatever happens next, you asked for it. Back in my car, I adjusted the mirror. My hair was messy and my eyes looked tired, but there was no flinch left in them. No shame either, just steel. The next week unfolded quietly. On the outside, I still worked. I still packed Evan's lunches. But inside, something had settled. Like a beam had shifted, and now the whole structure of how I'd lived was tilting. Tuesday morning, I opened my front door and nearly tripped over a cardboard box on the welcome mat. No note, just my name scribbled on the side. Inside were tax folders. Elwood's. I knew his handwriting, but it was what I found in the manila envelope beneath them that made me sit down, hard. Second mortgage agreement, credit statements, property appraisals. Marla's name stamped across every major purchase. Branding consultation. Jewelry business startup. Vacation property deposit. And Elwood's name, right next to hers. Every page, every line. He had co-signed it all. She mortgaged their entire life, I whispered to myself, flipping page after page. She built her castle on his back. I didn't wait for an invitation. That evening, I walked into Elwood's garage office. He was sorting bolts into jars, pretending to be busy. You left this at my place, I said, holding the envelope out. He froze, then slowly took it from me. His hands were trembling. I thought maybe someone should know what she's been doing, he muttered. Before it all caves in. I met his eyes. You don't owe me an explanation, but I'm not going down with you. His voice cracked. You're not trying to fix it? No, I said. I'm building something outside of it. I turned to leave, then paused. I'm applying for new contracts. Under my own name. No ties to her, no strings. Back home, I sat at my laptop, drafted the email to a local clinic I'd cleaned for once, briefly, years ago. Hi, my name is Yetta. I own and operate a private cleaning service. Licensed, reliable, client references available. I stared at the cursor before hitting send. Not dramatic, not desperate, just true. I didn't own a business suite. I didn't have a website with glowing testimonials, but I owned my time, my story, my name, and no one was going to weaponize that again. 2 days after I sent that email, I was on my porch trimming dead stems from my hydrangeas when a sleek SUV pulled up beside the curb. Marla stepped out, designer shades hiding half her face, the other half set in a curated smile. Hey! She called out, like we were still sisters from childhood, and none of this ever happened. Just wanted to swing by, see how you're holding up. I didn't offer her a chair. She looked around like she was inspecting a property she might flip. Thought maybe you could clean for us next week. There's that big brunch I'm hosting. You've got space in your schedule, don't you? I stared at her, certain this was a test, or a trap. You're serious? Of course, she said. No shame in honest work, right? I stepped aside and gestured for her to come in. Not because I wanted her there, but because I wanted her to see exactly what it looked like when I didn't flinch anymore. She stood in my living room, arms crossed. This is cute, very lived in. You keep forgetting, Marla, I said, my voice calm. I'm not your project. I'm not your story to embellish. You're being dramatic again, she shot back. A couple cleaning gigs and you think you've escaped gravity? I walked to the drawer, pulled out a printout. I held it up. This is the email you sent to Silverleaf, the one with the photo you pretended was sent out of concern. You buried my chances with a smile. She stiffened, then scoffed. It's not illegal to look out for my friend. I didn't lie. No, I said, but you told the truth like it was poison. That's worse. She didn't argue, not directly. Instead, she tossed her final jab before walking toward the door. Mom agrees with me, by the way. Said you've been off lately. Bitter. Jealous. I blinked once. She called me after your little meltdown. She's worried about you. I didn't follow her out. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it, quietly. But that sound, the firm click of the latch, was louder than anything we'd said. She hadn't come for help. She came to reestablish the throne she thought she still sat on. And when I wouldn't bow, she did what cowards do. She called for backup. A week passed. The invitation came in the form of a group text from Mom, something she rarely used unless it was about holidays or someone's surgery. Family dinner, no drama, just food and healing, Sunday at 6. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. And then I simply replied, I'll be there. Not to make peace, but to deliver truth. By 6, I had double-checked the flash drive twice and printed out backup copies. Evan stayed with a friend. I didn't need him there for this. This was about me reclaiming my voice, without raising it. Marla arrived at Mom's like a movie character. Big smile, makeup flawless, over-laughing at nothing. She leaned over and kissed Mom's cheek like she'd never thrown gasoline on a house fire. She's not well, Mom, she said under her breath, loud enough for the table to hear. She's been erratic, threatening. You should have seen her last time. I set the flash drive on the table like a coaster. You'll want to see this. She froze. Mom blinked. What is it? I stood, calm, steady. I didn't come to argue. I came to clarify. We plugged the drive into the living room TV. One by one, the files played. Marla's email to Silverleaf, with my photo attached. Trina's recorded voice memo confirming what Marla sent and said Elwood's notarized statement of the second mortgage Marla orchestrated without transparency. A screenshot of the message offering me a cleaning job after mocking me at dinner. The room was stone silent. Marla scoffed, but it sounded different now, tight, unsure. So what? You're acting like that's a crime. I looked at her. No, it's just the truth, and you don't like how it sounds without the perfume on it. Mom turned toward her, eyes narrower than I'd ever seen. Did you really do all this? Marla stammered. I was trying to help. I was protecting... Elwood cut in, voice low but certain. You were controlling, and I'm done. I've spoken to a lawyer. Trina stood next. Yetta's never been loud, but that doesn't mean we didn't notice what you did. Some people survive in silence. Doesn't mean they're weak. I finally sat back down, not smiling, not smug, just lighter. Because when truth has the mic, there's no need to shout. 3 weeks had passed since the dinner at Mom's. The air was cooler now, spring brushing in early with crisp mornings and gentler light. I stood in my backyard, watering the small vegetable beds I'd planted with Evan last fall. The soil smelled like something steady, something growing. Inside, Evan set out paper plates and a tray of sliced watermelon on the patio table. You think Aunt Trina eats turkey burgers? He called out, grinning. Before I could answer, her car pulled into the drive. She stepped out holding a manila envelope. Silverleaf wants to rehire, she said as she handed it to me. Turns out professionalism outshines gossip, even theirs. Inside was a new contract. My business name at the top, no attachments to Marla, just mine. We didn't toast, we didn't cheer. But something settled between us, a quiet acknowledgement that respect, once earned, didn't need applause. I hadn't heard from Marla, neither had anyone else. Word was she got dropped from the charitable board she clung to. Something about ethical concerns. Elwood moved into a rental across town, then left for Oregon a week later. A letter from Mom came in the mail. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I should have. I tucked it into the drawer beneath Evan's old report cards. I didn't burn it. I didn't write back. Some endings don't need punctuation, just space. Later that evening, as the grill hissed and Evan tried to flip burgers like a pro, I caught him watching me. You know, he said, tossing a bun onto a plate, you're kind of a badass. I laughed. I'm just a woman who got tired of shrinking to fit a role I didn't audition for. He shrugged. Still sounds like a badass to me. The sun dipped low behind the fence, casting our shadows across the lawn. I looked around at my quiet life, the one I built with bruised pride, boundless love, and no apologies. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't some storybook win. It was healing in its rawest form, unseen, uncelebrated, but mine. Sometimes surviving quietly doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've chosen your dignity over drama. It means you've decided not to let other people define your worth, even when they share your last name. Looking back, I used to think setting boundaries would break the family. But the truth is, letting people walk all over you breaks something much deeper, your spirit. And once your child starts carrying that silence as their shame, that's when you fight, not to destroy anyone, but to finally defend yourself. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel less than because you took a different path, maybe one with fewer titles or polished smiles, I want you to know your path still matters. You still matter. Family doesn't give anyone the right to own your voice, and healing doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with peace, quiet, steady, earned. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to someone in your own family? What does dignity mean to you, and how do you protect it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, even if it's just a 1 to let me know this story hit home. Or tell me where you're watching from. I truly love seeing this community grow. If this video resonated with you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next chapter. Hi there, I'm Lacey. It was my birthday, my 38th, and my sister handed me a gift bag that said, "Try harder next year." People laughed. Then she announced her pregnancy at my party. That was the moment I got up and left. But the truth? That wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time I walked out loud. They used guilt to keep me quiet. They humiliated me with a smile. They even went through my daughter to get under my skin. Why does the family that says they love you hurt you the most? They had the nerve to hang a banner with my name in LED lights, like I was the guest of honor. Like they hadn't just set me up to be humiliated in front of every cousin, uncle, and neighbor within a 100-mile radius. Balloons in shades of blush and ivory swayed in the breeze. The cupcakes looked like they'd been arranged by a wedding planner. Everything was perfect, except the part where I was supposed to feel celebrated. Travis stood beside me, hand on the small of my back. Junie skipped ahead, clutching her homemade card in both hands like it was sacred. Her glitter shoes sparkled under the late afternoon sun. Jody greeted us with that overly bright grin she uses when she's about to pull something. "There she is, birthday girl," she trilled, voice a little too loud. Our mom hovered behind her, already sipping wine and avoiding my eyes. I knew something was off the moment Jody grabbed the microphone. "Let's give my baby sister the gift she deserves," she beamed, dragging out every syllable. A plain white paper bag was handed to me. No ribbon, no wrapping, just a yellow sticky note slapped on crooked. "Try harder next year." The laughter started immediately, some awkward chuckles, a few gasps, but Jody laughed first. Too loud, too long. Inside the bag? A broken lip balm, half-used mints in a crumpled hotel wrapper, and a receipt to a dollar store. No card, no note, no effort. I didn't say a word, just looked at Junie, whose smile had faltered. She held up her glittery card to me like it might undo what had just happened. Before I could even process what the hell was going on, Jody grabbed the mic again. "Oh, before I forget, we're having a baby. Number 3. She clutched her stomach dramatically. "Surprise!" The cheers were instant. Mom rushed to hug her. Someone popped a confetti cannon. One of Jody's boys ran to the LED sign and flipped it. It now read, "Auntie again." That's when I knew. This party was never for me. I turned to Junie. "You ready for real cake?" I whispered. She nodded, eyes wide and silent. Travis was already reaching for the car keys. We left our plates untouched, walked out the side gate without a word. No one stopped us. No one called after us. The music swelled behind us, upbeat and artificial, but something cracked open inside me. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the sun had dipped behind the trees, leaving streaks of burnt orange fading into gray. Junie unbuckled herself in silence, still hugging that glittery card like it might undo the humiliation neither of us could voice yet. She walked ahead, letting the screen door creak shut behind her. Inside, the quiet was louder than the party music we'd left behind. Travis placed the card I'd made for my mother on the kitchen counter, wrapped in soft floral paper, tied with lavender ribbon. I'd spent hours crafting it. Photos of us through the years, a handwritten note about the time she nursed me through mono. A memory book. She never opened it. "She won't even look at it," I said softly, my eyes stuck on that untouched ribbon. Travis didn't answer. He just pulled me in, held me like he knew saying anything would cheapen it. Earlier that day, while Junie was busy drawing stars on her birthday cards for her cousins, I had carefully taped down the last photo in that journal. I wanted it to be something Mom would actually keep, something she'd reread when she missed me. I even wrote, "You raised me stronger than you think." Turns out, she didn't want strength. She wanted a replica of Jody. At the party, when I handed her the gift, she blinked twice and said, "Oh, I'll open it later." Her voice was thin, distant. Mom barely finished her sentence before Jody swooped in with a perfectly wrapped electronics box. "Something useful, not sentimental," she laughed. Mom's face lit up like someone flipped a switch. "Oh my God, is this the new health tracker? Jojo, how do you always know exactly what I need?" Everyone clapped. I was still holding the shredded wrapping from my gift. Now, standing in my kitchen, I opened the drawer beside the fridge and slid the unopened card inside, behind old coupons and expired batteries. Maybe I'd mail it to myself someday. Travis handed me a glass of wine and said nothing. That's what I loved about him. He never filled silence just to feel useful. I took a sip, let the burn settle. "She sees Jody as the daughter she wished she had," I whispered. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Maybe it's time you stop trying to become what she wants and start being who Junie already sees." That hit harder than anything at the party. My lips trembled. I took another sip. "I think I'm done pretending this family works." We heard small footsteps padding down the hallway. Junie appeared, holding the birthday card she'd made for me, pink crayon hearts and stick figures. She looked up. "Mom, do you think Aunt Jody meant it, that you should try harder next year?" I bent down to her level. "No, sweetheart. Some people forget how to be kind." She nodded slowly, then offered her card like a peace offering. "I think yours was the prettiest one." I kissed her forehead. That's because it came from someone who actually meant it. After Junie went to bed, I curled up on the couch with a blanket I wasn't cold enough to need. Travis kissed my forehead, whispered he'd be upstairs, and left me in the kind of silence that hums when your brain won't stop. I picked up my phone, not because I wanted to scroll, just to distract my hands. Muscle memory opened Instagram. That's when I saw it. My cousin Molly had posted a slideshow. White and gold decorations, long banquet tables under string lights, a 3-tier cake shaped like intertwined rings. Her caption? 50 years of love, couldn't imagine better parents. Cheers to the best night ever. I stared. My chest tightened. I hadn't been invited. I hadn't even known it happened. They threw a 50th anniversary party for my parents. Big, flashy, catered. And I wasn't even told. Not a text. Not a lie to cover it. Just nothing. My thumb hovered over the comment section. Should I pretend I didn't see it? Should I like the post to keep the peace? My heart beat against my ribs like it wanted out. I opened my messages, typed, "Me. I didn't know about the anniversary party." Read. No reply. 20 minutes later, Mom. We didn't think you'd want to come. You've been distant. Distant? After they watched my sister mock me in front of my child and said nothing? I had been quiet, not distant. There's a difference. I set the phone down and let my head fall back. The ceiling spun a little. I closed my eyes, and like it always does, memory came rushing in. I was 10. I'd gotten the lead in our school play. Weeks of rehearsal. I made my own poster, colored every star. Opening night came, and I scanned every row, holding my breath. Empty seats where my parents were supposed to be. Afterward, Mom said, "Jody had volleyball tryouts. You understand, right?" And I did. Or I said I did. I always did. Because being the easy one was the only way I knew to get any scraps of attention. Back in the present, I opened the bottom drawer of the side table. Inside was a folder labeled Family. I hadn't touched it in a while, but it was there, screenshots, emails, a birthday message from 2 years ago that just read, "Happy birthday." No punctuation, no name. A printed message where Mom called Jody our rock, our pride. The same year she told me, "You're hard to read." I flipped through the pages. One by one, they whispered the same thing. You've never been chosen. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even as a daughter worth remembering. By the time Saturday morning arrived, I had almost convinced myself the past week hadn't chipped at me as badly as it did. Then my phone rang. "Mom, Jody's babysitter canceled last minute," she began without greeting. "Can you pick up the boys from soccer and keep them a few hours?" I blinked. "Why can't you?" "My back's flaring again, and you're the most dependable." That word, dependable, landed like a backhanded compliment. I agreed, like always. And I hated that about myself. 2 hours later, I was pulling up to my parents' house with Jody's boys in the back seat, talking about juice boxes and video games like nothing was off, like their mom hadn't turned my birthday into a punchline 7 days earlier. At the barbecue, no one thanked me for picking them up. Not Jody, not Mom. The boys ran off, and I was left holding a half-empty sports bottle and a wrinkled jacket like the help who showed up early. The lawn buzzed with conversation. Folding tables groaned with potato salad and ribs. Uncle Rick called out across the yard, "Still doing that online gig, Lacey?" Before I could respond, Jody chimed in. "She edits company emails, internal stuff. It's cute." Mom laughed. "Well, at least it keeps her busy." My face flushed. I stared at my plate, untouched. Last week, I presented a full pitch deck to the board and secured an extra $15,000 in departmental funding. But sure, let's talk about how I'm kept busy. I glanced at Travis, who sat beside me chewing slower than usual. He didn't say anything, but his jaw was tight. He always knew when I was clenching words between my teeth. Inside my head, something whispered, "One more time. If they do this one more time." After dessert, Jody passed by me with her third glass of wine and muttered, "You always take things so seriously. It's just family. Don't be so sensitive." That line again, that lazy dismissal. I gave a polite nod and started gathering empty plates. Travis leaned in, voice low. "You good?" I smiled too wide. "Peachy." But in my chest, the line had already been drawn. 3 days after the barbecue, I was brushing Junie's hair after her bath, mentally ticking through my work emails and wondering if I had enough energy to care about dinner. Travis was downstairs loading the dishwasher. The house smelled faintly of lemon soap and the lavender lotion Junie insisted on. Just as I leaned down to kiss her cheek goodnight, my phone buzzed on the dresser. Mom lit up the screen. Without thinking, I answered. She was already crying. "You've made everything so tense lately," she sniffed. "Jody's trying so hard, and you're making her feel unwanted." I blinked, stunned. "I didn't even say anything at that barbecue." "Exactly," she said, voice rising. "You just sat there. All that sulking made it awkward for everyone. She was trying to lighten the mood. You used to laugh with us." I took a deep breath, held it, then said, flatly, before I realized I was the punchline. She sniffled louder. "You don't know how much this hurts me." I stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door gently behind me. "You're crying because I didn't fake laugh when your favorite daughter mocked my career in front of a table full of people?" There was silence. "You want me to comfort you because you let her humiliate me, and I didn't perform happiness on cue?" Still no answer. I kept going, my voice low but clear. You can't keep calling it keeping the peace when you only protect the loudest person in the room. She finally muttered, "You used to be easier." "No," I said, sharper now. "I used to be smaller. I used to shrink myself to fit inside whatever quiet corner made you most comfortable." Her breath hitched on the other end, but I didn't wait. I hung up. Downstairs, Travis looked up from the sink when he heard the click of my phone hitting the kitchen counter. "You all right?" he asked, wiping his hands. "Not yet," I said, pouring a glass of water, "but I finally said it." He stepped closer, gave me a quiet nod. That voice has waited a long time. I took a sip and let the silence settle. The weekend crept in quiet, like the calm before a storm you know is coming but can't quite name. By Saturday morning, the air felt too still. That's when the doorbell rang. A pink box sat on the front porch. Junie squealed, "It has stickers! It's from Aunt Jody!" I didn't even have to see the handwriting to know. She pulled the lid off with hopeful hands. Inside, a stuffed elephant missing one eye, broken crayons, a paperback with a torn cover, and a bent index card that read, "Thought of you, Aunt Jody." Junie's face changed instantly. "Did I do something bad?" I knelt beside her. "No, baby, you didn't." She blinked at me, lip trembling. I stood up, gathered the items, and walked straight to the kitchen trash bin. Junie didn't say anything, just followed me with wide, confused eyes. That night, after tucking her in and kissing her forehead twice, I checked my phone. Missed call. No voicemail icon. But when I opened my inbox, I saw the transcript. Jody's voice, snide and slow. "You think you're protecting her? You're just making her soft. She'll pick her side eventually. Let's see if she picks the dramatic mom or the family that actually shows up." I didn't feel the usual burn, just a cold kind of clarity. Travis read over my shoulder. "She actually said that?" I nodded, already moving toward the office. Laptop open, fingers steady. Subject, formal no contact request. Juniper Tanner. I CC'd the school principal, attached the voicemail file, added a note. "We are requesting no further unsupervised contact with this individual." Travis leaned in the doorway. "You're serious." "No more polite fences," I said. "No more letting them choose what hurts gets ignored." He crossed his arms. "You're doing the right thing." "It doesn't feel brave," I admitted. "It feels overdue." He shrugged. "Sometimes those are the same thing." 5 days passed. I thought the cease and desist, the school email, the attached voicemail, surely that would be the line in the sand. But people like Jody don't retreat. They regroup. Wednesday afternoon, I pulled into the school pickup line, window cracked for fresh air. Junie climbed into the back seat, hugging her backpack, then held out a pastel pink envelope with shaky hands. "Miss Lauren gave this to me. She said Auntie Jody dropped it off and asked her to pass it along." I froze. My fingers closed around the envelope and I opened it right there in the front seat. "If you ever feel sad or confused, Auntie Jody loves you. Even if your mom says no, you can always call me." Junie bit her lip. "Did I make someone mad?" "No, sweetheart," I said, voice even. "You didn't do anything wrong." But my hands were trembling so hard the note nearly tore. That night I skipped dinner. Went straight to my laptop, filed a second notice, this time a formal cease and desist with a copy sent to our family attorney and the school district superintendent. "This isn't family anymore," I told Travis. "This is sabotage." "She used someone else's name to bypass a legal order," he added, pacing the kitchen. "She's crossing boundaries on purpose now." I nodded. "And I'm done sending warnings." 2 days later, Dad's name flashed across my screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then came a text. "Heard about your letter to the school. Overreacting doesn't help anyone." Later that night, Jody posted a selfie online. New SUV, bow still on the hood. Caption, "Thanks, Dad, you always believed in me." I stared at the screen for a beat too long, then turned it off. No tears this time, just a soft, unfamiliar sense of certainty. I scrolled back to the message from Dad, hovered over the reply field, then hit delete. "They're not losing me," I whispered to myself. "I'm releasing them." Dinner was simmering on the stove, rosemary chicken, Junie's favorite, when my phone buzzed on the counter. Group text from Mom. I wiped my hands, unlocked the screen, and froze. There it was. Don't expect much from Lacey. She's always been overly sensitive. Just let her have this tantrum. Attached beneath the message was a picture of Junie, at school, on the playground, laughing. Someone had snapped it, probably Jody, and my mother had shared it casually, like Junie was part of a conversation I hadn't been invited into. Travis walked in just as I put the phone down. "She didn't mean to send that to you, huh?" he asked, reading my face. "No, but she meant every word." I didn't raise my voice, didn't throw anything. Instead, I walked to my desk, pulled out a folder titled Family, and opened my laptop. Every voicemail, every screenshot, every message that made my stomach twist over the years. I compiled them into a single PDF. No edits, no commentary. Subject: in case you're wondering why we stopped showing up. I attached the file, BCC'd every adult in our family tree, clicked send. By the time the chicken hit the table, replies had already begun to roll in. I had no idea. We always thought something was off. "You did the right thing?" My aunt unfollowed Jody publicly. A cousin shared the email in another family group chat. Someone screenshotted Jody's SUV post and wrote, "So this is what loyalty looks like?" I didn't reply to any of them, just watched the dust swirl. Then I went to my messages. Blocked Mom, blocked Jody. That silence? It wasn't an absence. It was a boundary, not an escape, a strategy. For once, I wasn't biting my tongue. I was letting the truth speak louder than any microphone they'd ever grabbed first. 2 weeks passed, the silence stayed, no apology, no explanation, just absence. Then, a thin envelope slid through our mailbox, my mother's handwriting on the front. Inside was a mass-produced sympathy card, printed cursive. "We miss our family, hope to reconnect someday." I flipped it over, blank, no note, no name. I grabbed a sticky note, scribbled 4 words. "So did I, once." I stuck it to the front and mailed it back. No return address, just space. Meanwhile, Jody vanished from social media. Her pages gone. Photos deleted. The SUV post erased like it never existed. I didn't rejoice. I didn't gloat. I just made pancakes. Junie, now freer in ways too quiet to measure, laughed more these days. She started drawing galaxies, whole constellations taped across her bedroom ceiling. "They don't buzz in my chest anymore," she told me one night as I tucked her in. Buzz? You know, that feeling when people act nice, but it's really sharp underneath. I kissed her cheek. That feeling has a name, and you're allowed to leave it behind. One Saturday morning, I got an email from a parent at her school. "Hey, Lacey, would Junie like to come to Ava's birthday party? She and my daughter talk about stars all day." I smiled, replied yes. Normal. It felt normal. At family day at school, Junie chose me. Each kid painted a picture of what family means. Hers? A swirl of soft pinks and blues, a small figure holding an umbrella under a sky of stars. In the corner, her caption read, "Safe is better than big." I didn't cry in front of her. I just squeezed her hand. That night, I opened my laptop to check work email. One unread message, no subject line. It was from Jody. "Are you happy now? You won?" I hovered over it, then clicked delete. No reply, no need. Because I didn't win, I walked away. And finally, I never looked back. Some people inherit furniture, some people inherit silence. I turned mine into a boundary. And finally, peace had room to breathe. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And silence? It's not always surrender. It can be the strongest boundary you'll ever set. For years, I tried to earn love by shrinking myself. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. I laughed at jokes that stung, showed up to events where I was invisible, and called it family. But here's what I know now. Being loyal to people who hurt you isn't love. It's self-abandonment. I don't tell this story because I want sympathy. I tell it because maybe someone watching has been biting their tongue too long. Maybe you've mistaken survival for harmony. If that's you, it's not too late to stop. You don't owe anyone your silence, especially when it's costing you your self-worth. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to protect you? What gave you the strength to finally say enough? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Even just drop a if this resonated with you, or type 1 if you've ever felt invisible around your own family. Tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know which city or state you're in. It helps this small community feel a little closer. And if this video touched something in you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are more stories coming, real, raw, and sometimes messy, but always with one goal, to remind you that your voice matters, your story is valid, and healing is possible. Thanks for being here. I see you.